Josiane Blanc is a writer, producer, and filmmaker whose work addresses social issues and cultural interactions. Josiane's film, Unapologetically Jackie, follows the life of legendary transgender soul singer Jackie Shane, most known for the song Any Other Way. Please stay tuned for my interview with Josiane Blanc. So, your film, Unapologetically Jackie, follows the life of Jackie Shane, a real life soul singer who was transgender. How did you first learn about Jackie?
I've actually first heard about Jackie Shane because I was approached by Rebecca, who is the producer behind the project. And she was doing a project about Canadian women forgotten about history. And she wanted to do 3 films to be part of a book project. And one of the films was about Jackie Shane. And what was funny about that is that I actually used to work in an office where in front of the office there was this big mural of Jackie in the window, and I actually didn't know who that was. And then when I started looking more in the story, when Rebecca talked about it, I realized that I spent 2 years staring at that mural, not knowing who that person was. And I got very intrigued in the story, and I thought it was a great project. So that's kind of how I got onboarded. And then I read more about Jackie, and in order to know a bit more about the story.
All right. So can you place Jackie in history?
Sure. So Jackie was born in Tennessee, in Nashville, in the 1940s. She's a transgender soul singer. And basically, at some part, the reason why I said Canadian is because she did move to Canada in the 60s and 70s. Her hit song, Ain't No Other Way, was actually while she was living in Canada. And she's really a pioneer, both in the genre of music that she created, but also for the fact that she was openly transgender in the 60s and realized very early on that she was transgender when she was in her teenage years.
So I love Jackie's story. A lot of conservatives think that people who are trans have just been created or they've been born recently. And I love learning about queer history because we learned that queer people have existed since the beginning of time. And so these stories are so important. And I'm so glad that the universe worked to bring Rebecca to you and you worked on this project together. So why is Jackie's story important to you?
I think it was very important because, as you said, I feel like a lot of people often are erased from our history. I feel like the fact that, Jackie, as you said, was performers in her years in the 60s and the 70s, that we didn't know anything about her. And again, as I said, I was staring at that mural, not knowing who she truly was. I think it's important for, especially when we're thinking about marginalized minorities queer and transgender and Black people and so on, to make sure that the stories are out there, that we share them. And I think that it's part of the type of work that I like to do in terms of putting upfront people who are not seen, and having the opportunity to work on that short film and actually showcase a part of Jackie's history was very important, both as part of the project, but in a bigger scope, just to get to allow people to know about her, because I think it's just in the recent years that we've truly started talking about her. There is a documentary that came out last year about Jackie Shane, produced by the NFB. I have not had the chance to see it yet, but Rebecca and many other people saw it and told me that it was great. And I think that, we are talking about her now. It's great. I think it's important, and it's part of our history, right?
Yes, exactly. So you not only wrote the film, you directed it. What inspired you to create this project?
I think that when I digged into the story, I was fascinated, not only from the fact that she was out at a very early age. We talk about her teenage years, the way that her mother reacted to her identity as well was really inspiring, especially when we think about the period of time where Jackie was raised. And I think that what was the hardest part as a creator was to figure out how and what part of the story are we showcasing in a 4-minute film. So we focused on, and I say we because it was a collaborative work. Obviously, I wrote the script, but I worked a lot with Rebecca on feedbacks and so on. And we decided to focus on early age because at the time we thought, oh, this is a part of the story that less people might know of. So when you see the film, we really start with young Jackie as a kid, and then we evolve into how we transition into how she got inspired to get into music and gospel. Until then, we transition again in another chapter of her life when she started performing in her teenage years. And I think that for me it was just great to showcase that part of the story instead of focusing more on the later days that is more known in the history. Yeah.
Okay. So I have a technical question. So I love the color story of the film, like the woods, the warm colors, the lighting. Color and lighting impact a story. How did you make the choices regarding lighting and color?
Yes, I worked with an amazing DP, Ricardo Diaz, who's a Black DP based in Toronto. And I think for me, when I read the story, I wanted something to feel warm and organic. I feel like we were in a gospel and R&B kind. That's what it inspired. And when we ended up actually filming the film in a church, which was all the scenes were filmed in different locations in the church, which actually kind of worked with the environment of having a lot of woods and organic textures. And I felt that for me, the character of Jackie was a very warm person. I felt that also the relationship that she had with her own mother and the transition with the music. It's just, I wanted the film to feel warm. I wanted us to feel that warmness and that power through also the visuals. And that's how we kind of worked together with Ricardo to create the ambience of something warmer. And obviously, as we went through post and color as well. So yeah, I think we also worked with Katie, who was the costume designer, which I've worked with a few times on other projects in terms of coming out with the colors. We wanted Jackie to be in red. Like all of these were kind of elements because we wanted her to pop in the decor, and red kind of became that color from the early scene where the young Jackie's putting on red lipsticks all the way to the end. So that's something else that was discussed with the creative team.
What did Jackie Shane mean to you before filming, and what does Jackie mean to you now?
That's a good question. I think before filming, I would say it was more of a mystery. It was more of this person that I didn't know much about, and I was intrigued into understanding more who she was. There's also an entire chapter of her life in the 70s where she disappeared from, if you dig into her story, in the 70s, she disappeared for like two decades, where she was out of the light, but she was she completely disappeared. She wasn't singing anymore. Nobody really know where she was, and then she reappeared again after a few decades of being out of the scene of singing and everything. And I think that for me that was very intriguing, and that was very intriguing how she was that pioneer, and then she just like left the surface of the earth to reappear at the end. And I think that now that the film is done and that I've stayed a little bit with that character as I was writing the script and I was reading through the story. I think that I feel inspired by that journey. I think that as a Black woman, as a person living on Earth, truly, but I feel like it's really inspiring to look at people who would. I cannot only imagine what she had to go through to be living authentically in the 60s and the 70s as a Black transgender woman. And I think that it's so inspiring. It's so inspiring because, her legacy still lives on. As you were mentioning earlier, that idea that, people would think, oh yeah, this is a woke 2024 type of thing, that transgender people exist and whatever, and then you see where you're like, well, actually no, Jackie Shane was there way before that time, and there were most likely people before her that preceded her, but it was important for her to live in the life so people knew she existed. And I think for me, also, that's why films like this needs to travel so people know about that history and can't really deny it, right?
Yeah, and I love that aspect of that, educating the public, because I feel like now it's very dangerous in some communities to be transgender or gender non-conforming. And so the more that we create visibility through documentaries, through storytelling, that the public know that people who don't look like me, they have existed for a very long time. And so that's why, these stories are important. So a lot of the directors that I've interviewed this year for the film festival, they also wrote their scripts. So do you see yourself as a writer or director first?
That's an excellent question. I feel like it's always something. I think I'm a writer first. I think that I love directing, but writing was my first love. I started writing as soon as I got a pen and I could actually write, and I was writing stories. And it's funny to think that somebody told me once that, the first thing that you actually loved as a kid is probably your true passion. And it's funny because I wanted to be a book writer when I was like 7. I was like, I want to write books and so on. And I never actually thought as I grew up, and I was like, I can't make a career or any money as a creator. I never actually thought that I would be writing later on. But directing is also very fun. I feel like that's why I love to be able to be part of the entire process. Is taking stuff from the page to the screen is such a magical moment where when character starts to be alive in front of you and you actually be able to create what you've seen all along as you were writing is also very fun.
I love that. So the film is a short. Do you plan on making a feature film?
That's a good question. I think that there's so much to say. I do have to admit, I would have to see what's been done already. I feel like because there's a feature that's already out there, there might not be any more space for another feature. There's always more to tell, but probably not. It could have been a nice project, but I think we're a little bit behind now.
You have written several other projects. Tell me about one project that you previously worked on that prepared you to write and direct Unapologetically Jackie, and how did it prepare you?
Wow, that's big. I feel like every single project you work on kind of prepares you for the next, and not really at the same time. I think that every single projects are unique. They come with their unique stories, their unique teams, their unique challenges sometimes too. I think that, obviously Hot Town was a short form series. It was a web series. It was 7 short episodes. So the more I direct content that is scripted, the more, I guess, the better I get at it. I hope so. So that was directed just before I directed Unapologetically Jackie. And I think that it did prepare me in the sense that understanding more the reason behind some of the details that you were talking about earlier, which I feel like this is something that I coming from the documentary, Words Left Unspoken, for example, is a documentary, and I'm coming from the documentary world initially, and going into the scripted, I really dive more into how do you choose your costume? Why is she wearing red instead of blue or orange or purple? And finding purpose instinctively, but still finding purpose in every single decision, which I think is even more a reality in scripted content. And that was that I would say was what I did earlier that prepared me to when I did Jackie. I was like, oh, okay, so she's gonna be wearing red because that makes sense for me in that story, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's kind of definitely how I get prepared. And I guess that what I've done with Jackie would prepare me for whatever is coming next.
So the very first project to the last project, how have you changed in terms of the process for writing?
I think that if I'm being completely honest, I changed from not knowing what I was doing to actually understanding what I'm doing. But I feel like, honestly, I think that I went to film studies school, so I watched a lot of films. I analyzed a lot of films, but I don't come from like a 2 years degree in script writing or film directing in a way that I'm like, oh, I came out of school, somebody taught me exactly how to properly do a film. I did a lot of like learn and mistakes and evolved along the way. So now I feel, after I've been independent for like, I've been doing films for a little while, but I've been independent and doing this as my career for the last 6 years. I do feel that when I sit down about something, I'm way more confident and I understand and I have a vision that's way more clear that I can sit into and be like, okay, this is the specific directing vision for this particular project. As before, I feel like I was sitting with a lot of insecurities about like, oh, am I going to do this? Is this right? And is this really like, is this actually good? Now I feel like, after a few years, like, okay, I think I know how to do this. This is project number 10. I guess that I wouldn't be here if I didn't know how to do this. So it comes with more confident, but also more being more okay with the just like trusting the vision and trusting the process as I'm doing it, and being okay if it's not perfect all the time, which is something that I've learned as I was doing it.
What is your top favorite film of all time?
Oh my God, I hate this question. I hate this question so much because I never know what to answer. I did journalism school too. So I've done a bunch of things. I've done journalism and communication. What is my actual favorite film of all time? Can we come back to this? I should have an answer prepared because
I'll tell you mine. It's because it's you know what's funny is that like it's the visuals of the film that I find striking. And one of the openings is called Beau Travail. And I want to say the director name is Claire Dennis, but I could be off. And I love that the visuals are their own language. And that you could watch it without the sound and you will still be able to understand the story. And it is so gorgeous. So the opening sequence is kind of like it's the French Legion. So that that specialized military group, they're practicing these exercises. But it's like in this very kind of like stark, minimalist environment. And it's literally their bodies are just like front and center. So they almost look like, and these are like military guys. And so they're very muscular and they're shirtless and they're wearing kind of like these brown pants. But it is just like visually just beautiful. Absolutely my favorite film of all time. But I love foreign films because I feel like they're more like plot driven. Where like American films are very kind of like superhero, explosions, fast cars. Those are, beautiful. But I want to know, a character's wants, their needs, what's driving them. And I feel like it's the independent foreign films that are able to show us where a character starts and where they end, like in a way that's just gorgeous.
No, I mean, no. Can you give me the title again? I haven't seen it. I'll watch it.
Beau Travail, but it's French, so I could be butchering it.
Beau Travail. Okay, yeah. I will try and find it. I mean, I think there's a lot. What I find challenging with that question is that there's a lot of films that I really appreciated that stayed with me. One of them, talking about French film, is La Haine from Mathieu Kassovitz, which is a film from the 90s that happens in the French suburbs, and it's filmed in black and white. It's beautiful. You're really with the characters. and it's poignant, and it's one of my favorite films. But I have a lot of films that I like for different reasons, right? I remember another one that struck with for me was A Beautiful Mind, which was directed by Ron Howard. And and I think that for me, I am definitely plot driven. I love beautiful plots. I love great dialogues. I guess that's why I'm more of a writer. Like sometimes I just get excited and I'm like, damn, who wrote that line? When I get excited about good writing. So yeah. But there's so many great movies and not enough time on Earth for me to see them all, unfortunately.
I have a list of films that I have to watch. All right, so next question. What advice would you give to a young writer and filmmaker watching this video right now who has not directed their first film?
That's a good question. I feel like I think that there would be a variety of things, but one of the biggest thing I think is writing. I guess writing from your guts, or writing what you. I guess the easiest thing is when you start usually is to write what you know, not trying to write what you think people wants to hear, not trying to direct a film that you think that people would want to see. Direct the film and write the film that you want to know and you want to see. Because at the end of the day, it's what's going to resonate with people if it's resonate truly with you. And sometimes I think when we start, we have this impression that, we're trying to think, oh, how am I going to make the film that's going to make it to TIFF or it's going to make it to whatever festival? But this is not it. How are you going to make the best film that you can make? And what is the story that you really, really want to tell? And this is how we're going to see your vision. And I think that when I figured that out for me, because at first, initially, I was so scared of writing something and I kept writing 2 lines and scratching them off because I was like, oh no, this is not good enough. People are not going to like that, or they're not going to. So I never wrote. And that's the funny part is that I went through film school and so on, never really writing anything because I was always questioning, is it interesting enough? And I couldn't find ideas. And at some point when I sat down, I was like, you know what? If I wanted to see a film, this is what I would write about. And then writing became something else. It became fun. It became engaging. I knew the characters. I was seeing them, and then it became easier and easier. And projects take so long to get off the ground. Even sometimes short films, just finding fundings, and if you don't have fundings, finding people to work with you on your first short film when you don't have money. That you better be ready to be in for the long time and still care about that story 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line. I have a project that's coming out right now in a week. My documentary Words Left Unspoken. It's been 7 years. This was the first ever project that I pitched. This is the project that I thought would be my calling card, and it's coming out after all of these projects. And I'm like, if I didn't really like and didn't care about that story, which is a documentary about a really good friend of mine, this project would not have lasted that long. So
that gives me hope. I filmed a documentary probably 6 years ago, and my editor just kind of disappeared on me. So now I have to edit it myself, which I don't want to do. And so I'm like, I've been dragging my feet, but I realized that if it's going to see the light of the day, that I have to do it myself. And so thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that, because I was like, this is going to be buried. Nobody will see it.
But at this point, you filmed it already, edit it. Send it out into the world. And then it's out there. And it took forever, but I'm really excited, and we're premiering next week.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you would like viewers to know about you or your film?
That's a good question. I think that, it was a labor of love, obviously. I like to say that, it takes a village to make a film. So it's my work, but it's also everybody else who contributed to this amazing film. Work as well. I think we're very excited for the films to be launching, to be at the festival, to be traveling. We have a few more screenings coming up, one in Toronto in a few days as well. I think I'm just really excited to be able to contribute in having Jackie's story